Commercial lodging and overview. Initiating lodging on a disaster relief operation. When a disaster occurs, workers often need to be housed in a commercial facility like a hotel or motel while on their assignment. This training will show you how Red Cross secures that housing. So the purpose of this training is to provide staff services workers an understanding of commercial lodging and its functions on a disaster relief operation, and to provide the information required to initiate lodging on a disaster operation. Now, at the conclusion of this course, participants will be able to understand the role of Red Cross working with corporate lodging consultants, initiate lodging, develop a lodging plan, and request lodging from corporate lodging consultants or CLC, create and submit lodging reports. Now, before we look more at corporate lodging, let's take a look at where our workers are housed while responding to a disaster assignment. Red Cross volunteers and employees who reside in the affected area will use their home as their lodging assignment. Most local workers stay at their home and commute back and forth each day. It's expected if a worker lives within 50 miles or 1 hour or less drive time to the work location, the worker will stay at home. A location for each worker's home of record is already entered in Volunteer Connection, and it just needs to be affiliated with the disaster operation. Some workers may have family or friends in the area of the disaster and may choose to stay with them instead of lodging that we provide. Commercial lodging is the preferred method of housing that visiting staff use when it's available. Every effort will be made to provide workers with shared rooms in commercial lodging facilities. At times, though, adequate commercial lodging facilities are not available and staff shelters may be used. These are congregate lodging facilities. They're similar to client shelters, but they have other Red Cross workers rather than clients in them. The disaster operations staffing lead will be responsible for coordinating lodging once an operation is activated. It's important to have all lodging information ready to be shared with them, including any predetermined staff shelter locations your chapter or region may have. So let's take a look at the Red Cross's responsibilities in lodging. So responsibilities to corporate lodging consultants is to request lodging, release unused rooms, and cancel or extend any existing contracts through CLC. Our responsibilities to our staff: it's extremely important that we provide clean and safe lodging accommodations for our workers. Keep in mind that they are unfamiliar with the area and rely on staff services to lodge them in safe areas where they can find appropriate places to meet their needs. And we also have responsibilities to donors. It's up to us to carefully monitor our costs in lodging. We must always take appropriate steps to ensure we are not paying for anything we're not using. This means always doubling up staff in a room, canceling unused rooms, and making room changes to reduce number of rooms required to accommodate staff. This requires constant monitoring of our lodging activities and making sure that we have adequate staff to perform this task effectively. Now, we mentioned one of the American Red Cross's responsibilities in lodging is determining the location or locations, the number of rooms that are needed, and then estimated length of contract for rooms to submit to corporate lodging consultants. The development of a lodging plan will help determine that. The lodging can be very simple. So your lodging plan can be very simple, as you can see displayed here on this slide. Okay, you can add as many areas as you need for work locations. As you can see, in this particular area, we only have one work location that we are trying to secure lodging for. The numbers that you need to enter for staff needing lodging will be explained later in this training. But then again, as you can see on our lodging plan, our action required is the most important part of the plan. So again, just a brief overview. We're focused on one work location. We've got listed the number of current staff that are working there. We're looking at other staff that are arriving today. So these are current staff that are working. We're planning for additional staff that are arriving today, and then we're planning for staff that are arriving tomorrow, which will generate our action required, which is to request 10 beds for 14 days for the folks that are arriving today, and then we need to go ahead and request an additional 15 beds for workers that are arriving tomorrow. So you'll have tools to help you create your lodging plan. So these will include a meeting with your staffing lead. They'll help guide you on where you will need rooms, special circumstances with the disaster relief operation to consider, and any other needed information to help you secure lodging. There's reports available. You're going to want to obtain and review the air travel report. This report is in Volunteer Connection, and it identifies members who are traveling by air. It gives the date and time they are arriving and the location where they will be arriving. You also want to look at the arrival roster, another report from Volunteer Connection. It'll identify people who have been assigned to the disaster relief operations, so perhaps not traveling by air. IRV, rental car, another means of transportation could include the air travel as well. Again, use this information to help generate those numbers to request lodging for those incoming staff. And then you'll also want to obtain a copy of the current open staff request from the local community volunteer manager or designee. You'll use these open requests to identify the number of probable incoming staff requested at each work site. So once assigned to a disaster operation, every worker will have access to an incident action plan. You can use the information in the incident action plan to help identify current work sites that we're operating out of and the number of staff at each work site. Once the locations, date, and length of time of accommodations are known, then the lodging plan may be compiled. The lodging plan should be simple and identify current and future needs. So now that you have your lodging plan in place, and it's clear where accommodations are needed and the number of rooms needed is determined, a lodging request is submitted to our vendor for securing lodging, Corporate Lodging Consultants. They're an independent company contracted to provide housing to the American Red Cross workers during a disaster. Once a disaster relief operation number is issued, all lodging must be contracted through Corporate Lodging Consultants. We will discuss later on what to do if your chapter or region contracted with lodging facilities prior to a disaster relief operation being issued. CLC will contract with the hotel for the appropriate number of rooms and provide the Red Cross with confirmation of the agreement along with its parameters, which could include number of rooms, the length of the contract, and so on. Staff Services will utilize this housing only after receiving that written confirmation. Since this requires contact between CLC and the appropriate signing authority at the lodging facility and a contract to be negotiated and signed, this may take a couple of hours. All billing for these contracts is handled by CLC. So here's your lodging request form. You'll find this form on the exchange, and as you can see, this is a screenshot of the top part of the form, which gives clear directions on how to complete the form. So again, this is the very top section of your lodging request form that you'll be filling out. Now a little bit further down, you can see the actual information that's requested for you to fill out. All fields must be completed with accurate information. In this section of that same form, you can see how the information from your lodging plan will help with completing the request. Each area listed on your lodging plan will be added to each request section in the form. So again, remember on our lodging plan before, we needed to request, I believe it was 10 rooms for today, and then we had an additional 15 rooms that we needed to request for the next day, so that would be entered down here. So again, you see how that lodging plan is helpful in filling out your lodging request form to be submitted. All Red Cross regional chapters should have local vendor agreements with hotels on file. Staff services lodging staff on the disaster operation should try to obtain those vendor agreements, and when they request lodging accommodations, they can tell CLC that the local Red Cross has an agreement with a particular hotel or that they prefer to use a particular hotel. CLC will try to get that hotel, but there's no guarantee that they will be able to obtain any or enough rooms at that facility. Now, when you've got all the information on your lodging request form and you're sure it's accurate, the request is ready for submission. So you'll submit the request by email between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Central Time. The reason why we use Central Time is because that's the time zone that Corporate Lodging Consultants operates on. You'll email the request to rapidresponse@clclodging.com and copy disasterlodging@redcross.org. So what happens if you have to request rooms after regular business hours? So you'll have one additional step. After business hours, you will need to phone in the request to the CLC toll-free number. Then you'll do that same email your request form to rapidresponse@clclodging.com and disasterlodging@redcross.org. In the body of the email, you're going to want to include something along the lines of, this is a follow-up to a phone request made to Barbara Smith at CLC at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now again, you can always refer to the instruction on the lodging request form, remember at the top of that form, and there should always be a staff services supervisor or lead available to assist you. CLC will send written confirmation via an email indicating the request has been fulfilled. That confirmation will first go to Rob Poi. He's a virtual lodging volunteer who will then forward the confirmation to you on the disaster operation. Once confirmation is received, you may assign workers to hotel rooms. Please do not assign any hotel rooms to workers before we have a guarantee that we have rooms in writing. You will use a tool that we call hotel boxes to track lodging, which we'll look at here soon. But before we do that, I want to mention a couple other reports. These will be coming from CLC. So one would be the reservation reports. These are received when the individual requests are made. Another report is the cumulative report, which are distributed multiple times a day and provide a report on all reservations that are held. Cumulative reports are not updated on weekends by CLC. Now we'll look at your hotel boxes. This is the spreadsheet that you will use to track the beds that are assigned at each hotel. We get this information daily from the sign-in sheets that are collected from the hotels. The ratio we look for is no more than 1 empty bed for every 10 filled. So again, this sheet would represent one hotel where we have workers staying. Again, there's great instructions at the top of this form as well. Again, we would take our hotel sign-in sheet and we would see the room numbers. Okay, we're going to determine what type of room this is. Is it a double female occupancy or a double male occupancy? Again, the instructions are up here. You would put a responder's name and the date that they checked in. And then in the same room, you would put the second occupant's name and the date that they checked in. So this will help you track the number of beds that you have and how many are filled, but just always remember that Volunteer Connection is the database of record and it should be kept current at all times. So a commercial lodging daily report is completed each day and submitted to disaster staffing. The instructions for completing this commercial lodging daily report is located with the spreadsheet. Okay, so you're going to enter your disaster relief operation number and the date that it stood up. And then you're going to use your cumulative report. Again, that's one of the reports that comes from CLC in your hotel assignment boxes. That's your tracking spreadsheet. and you'll fill in the rows with hotel data. The data you enter will auto-complete the field shown in the next slide. So these are the sections that will be auto-populated. You'll need to enter the total number of workers on MDA or maximum daily allowance for the reporting area. One place you can get that information from is your staff roster. That can be found in Volunteer Connection under your disaster management and queries, where all of the reports are located. Okay, then you will mail the completed form to your staff services lead by 10 a.m. local time. The staff services lead will then send a copy to disaster.staffing@redcross.org by 11 a.m. local time. Again, if you need help with this form, reach out to your staff services lead for assistance. Now, when you go into Volunteer Connection Disaster Management, you can find these reports that can be helpful in reconciling your data. The lodging by worker report can be used, again, to look at your lodging and those that are on MDA or, again, maximum daily allowance, and can help you identify problems, maybe some information that you need to track down or information that needs to be corrected. So again, your reports are on your Volunteer Connection Disaster Management screen. Typically, your DRO staffing would be a row of buttons, and again, you're going to click on that Queries button to get to your reports. All of your lodging reports are on page 4. Here's how they actually look once you get to that 4th page in your queries. Now, if you're wondering, one of the sources of the information that you'll see on those lodging reports actually comes from the data entry that we put in when a worker in processes to the operation. So again, when a worker first checks in with staffing on the operation, they may know their lodging location, what hotel they're going to stay in, staff shelter, etc. So they may be able to go ahead and put the lodging location in. Let's say it's a hotel, but perhaps they didn't know the room number. So now we know their room number because we got the sign-in sheet from the hotel, and we want to enter that information. How do we do that? So to make those corrections, you're going to go into your Volunteer Connection Disaster Management, and you'll go to Staff Management. And whenever you want to make corrections, you'll click on the little wheel by the responder that you want to make corrections to. So let's say I clicked on that wheel. It would bring me to this screen for that responder. Then I would click on the Lodgings tab, and I could put their room number in and save it. Now, there's additional trainings and resources available to you if you want to excel as a lodging worker, become a lead. You can complete the online Volunteer Connection Disaster Management courses on Edge and download the Volunteer Connection job aids and the lodging job tools from the exchange. Check with your regional disaster workforce engagement lead or regional staff services lead if you need assistance finding any of the content. Now, on all small disaster relief operations, it's recommended that you utilize virtual support if there are no experienced lodging staff available. Don't wait till you're overwhelmed, though. If you are not the lodging or staffing lead on your operation, have your staffing lead request virtual lodging support by emailing disaster staffing. Lodging is a large expense on a disaster relief operation and should always be managed efficiently. Virtual support is available to provide technical support when needed. This should not be viewed as a shortcoming, but rather forward thinking and what is in the best interest of the disaster relief operation. You will always have a support system in place on the disaster relief operation, but you can also use additional lifelines if needed. You can email disaster staffing for technical support when necessary. This concludes this training. Thank you for your willingness to learn about the Red Cross corporate lodging process. You may now exit this presentation.